So if you're looking at woodlands, how do you tell what sort of woodland you've got from a distance? Well, it's not terribly easy. That woodland over there, let's see beyond the power pole, that's probably recently planted. It sits there on the skyline, you can see right through it, and it's all canopies of one colour, one sort of shape. And if you come over here, I happen to know this wood, but you can see that there are large domed canopies. You can see this one here and here, around a canopy that's a lot lower. Now in that wood there are a lot of very large, very old beech trees that sit in and are surrounded by derelict hazel coppice. And this is the hazel you can see here. You can see it a little bit on this woodland here. You can see the oak canopies, the oak crowns, large, upstanding, and they've got recently restored hazel coppice here, which is fenced against here. Look at this one, and this is the wood that I do my coppicing in. And you can see an area through here, which I've actually coppiced. But on the top there, can you see those trees beyond this large domed crown, which are sort of yellowish, almost polleny dusty looking? You can see another one here and another one here. Those are sweet chestnut, and if you see a lot of those in one place, you can surmise that you might well have derelict sweet chestnut coppice, which once upon a time, especially in areas nearby where they produced a lot of hops for beer production, and there was a big brewery in Dorchester, they would have used the sweet chestnut coppice, to produce the poles on which they strung the hop vines. So the hops would have been grown in rows, with wires strung between large end poles and with intermediate poles, and they would have been sweet chestnut because they were tall, straight, uniform, and naturally durable. So you put them in and they were in there for 25-30 years, no problem at all, without having to be treated, because of course treatments for timber weren't readily available until you start to get into the late 19th, early 20th century. So if we walk up here, you'll have to pardon the wind noise, and we can look closer at this tree here, this sweet chestnut. Can you see how it's different from the trees underneath? Hopefully you can see, even though this is a GoPro, so that canopy there stands out as well. There's an oak canopy beside it, see the dome, and then the other dome. But that is only going to be visible at certain times of the year. At the moment it's in catkin. Earlier in year, when it's in leaf, it'll look very little different than the oaks beside it. And you can see this one here's a sycamore, this one is an elm, and you've got hazel. Up here, we're in the lee of the wind now, you can see oak over hazel, and you can see oak here, but the canopy on the right again looks slightly different. That I know is a cherry because I know this wood. But if you came up here when the cherry's in flower, that would be completely unmistakable, because it would be a mass of flowers, but it's only like that for a couple of weeks maximum, and that happens before the thing puts its leaves on, and the other trees put their leaves on. You can sometimes look at a woodland and see that it's obviously different. For instance, if it's conifer plantation, because most conifers that are used for forestry are evergreens, so keep their leaves all year round, and in profile, in silhouette if you like, they're pointy. Another tree you can tell that's different from a distance is hazel, because early in the year it comes into catkin. Some of them come into catkin really early, some individual trees, and they've got these large yellow male catkins which produce an awful lot of pollen, which affects my tendency to hay fever. But an area of hazel coppice which has been stood long enough will produce an awful lot of catkins. So sometimes the woods, especially low down underneath the canopy of the larger trees, which, don't forget, haven't come into leaf yet, are yellow with hazel. So if you want to survey for hazel that you might want to cut or you might want to restore, then March time is usually best. So the question as to how do you tell what you've got in a woodland from a distance, how to differentiate, say, woodland types in a large area, is not easily answered. Right, this is the view from the other side of this oak canopy. This is dark green, and this sweet chestnut canopy, which is in catkin. And hopefully, even though it's a GoPro with no zoom function, you can see they look completely different. And on the ground under it, I'll show you in a minute, you've got the catkins, which are just about finished flowering, that have dropped onto the ground. So if you've got a lot of these in a woodland, you can actually tell from a distance that they are there, if you look at the right time of year. And that would appear to be late June, early July. Don't forget, by the time late September, October comes around, these flowers will have developed and produced large, fully formed nuts in their capsule. There's 3 or 4 nuts per capsule, so that's a lot of resources that the tree is putting into its seed source, and that's really quick growth. Right, this is that sweet chestnut from closer to, and if you look up there against the sky, you might be able to see through the magic of GoPro, which doesn't zoom or anything, but you've got a lot of these, and these are its catkins. These are the males, I assume, pollen bearing. They certainly do put out a lot of pollen. You see they're all over the ground. See them? So at this time of year you can go wander around your woodlands and say, yeah, that woodland's got sweet chestnut in it. Well, that one there's got a lot of sweet chestnut in it. Is that derelict sweet chestnut coppice? Could we restore that? Would it be worth restoring it? And I'll show you why on the way home, because sweet chestnut does have value. Right, I promised I'd show you why sweet chestnut coppice still has value. Something we see quite often. This is a pub on the way home, and you can see a stretch of Sussex fencing. Well, I know it's Sussex fencing, and it's basically cleft sweet chestnut uprights with cleft sweet chestnut rails mortised in, and that's long lasting, it's naturally durable and doesn't require any nails. The only difficulty with it is if the rails get damaged, being mortised in, you basically got to dig up the posts to put new rails in. But that's a traditional style of fencing, and very, very attractive. This has been up here just about a year. Should last at least 10 more.